Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Andrew Stott, I'm the Emperor of Stomaria, and today I want to show you what I consider to be the first ever interview regarding the Empire of Stomaria. Now, the footage you're about to see was never actually intended to be published. It was actually a video call that I had with a chap called Alex, who's researching Micronations for a project of his. And he's kindly agreed to allow us to publish the sort of informal interview that we had on our YouTube channel. So please, please accept my apologies in advance for the quality of the interview. Like I said, it wasn't intended to be a sort of a formal setting or something to be published later on. It was just a sort of a friendly chat. But I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you at the end.
Thanks for taking the time to talk to me about Semeria and everything. It's really appreciated. Just basically sort of at the moment, my project is sort of to try to talk to as many people as possible and get an idea of micronations and the people behind them, and sort of to sort of document the stories and sort of the people and hopefully at some point take photos when we're able to sort of travel around and meet people a bit easier and everything. But so would we be able to start with would you be able to describe the Empire of Stomaria? Is it Stomaria or Stomaria, or is that
I mean, people say it differently. Yeah. I always say Stameria.
Stomaria, okay. Would you be able to describe Stomaria and when you founded it and what it stands for?
Oh well, gosh, it's sort of the founding history of Stameria is a bit of a funny story. I don't know if you've got time for it, but the short of it is, me and my wife were actually sort of walking into town one night, and we were talking about sort of our experiences as in our childhoods. And I remember telling her that when I was younger, me and my siblings, we would always, sort of go out and sort of, do the usual thing that you do as a kid, build a fort, raise a flag, and pretend to be a civilization or something. And Samantha my wife made a passing comment saying, "Wouldn't it be great if we could just do something like that now?" And I sort of got it into my head and said, well, why can't we? Why can't we just do something like that? Why can't we sort of, sort of build the world that we want to build and sort of, work towards, establishing a society or a community that are based on principles that we think are important. And so it sort of started from there. And then after about best part of 6-9 months, I suppose, of just sort of behind the scenes, sort of developing some of my ideas, we sort of created a Facebook page, sort of published it online. And as you might expect, it only had a few dozen followers initially, and now it's some 5,000 plus. But it's really been taken off since then. And that again, it was micronations are founded for different reasons, and some don't have any. Most micronations that you might come across are literally 12 or 13-year-olds or even younger, sort of raising a flag in their parents' back garden, declaring themselves a sovereign nation. I mean, those aren't sort of micronations that we tend to associate with. There's nothing wrong with what they're doing, obviously, but it's not on the same level as what we're trying to do. We've sort of formally associated with the Wayward Territory and the Republic of New Westphalia, which I believe you may be familiar with both of them.
Yes, yeah, I met Stan yesterday actually. I went to go take photos of him.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But Wayward is definitely another one that you might want to consider if you haven't already gotten in touch with them.
I haven't spoken to them yet, but I have heard a lot. I've sort of been following the YouTube channel.
I was going to say, if you've seen the YouTube channel, you can see there's generally a lot going on. They're an eccentric lot, to say the least. But they're really lovely. They really are, and they're harmless, and they enjoy a laugh, and they're probably one of the better developed micronations in the UK in terms of actually doing what it says on the tin, what you might expect micronation to be. As for the Stameria itself, it was even now I consider it still a largely conceptual idea, purely because hopefully we'll be getting our first plots of land later in the year, so we can put some of our objectives and values into practice, be that in terms of our values on soil fertility or renewable energy, or preservation of the environment and all the rest of it, that sort of thing. Until we get that actual land, I always do consider Stameria to be quite a conceptual project. But even though that's the way I consider it, it's still, in my opinion, quite, we're moving in the right direction. We have a lot going for us. There's a lot, we've got the uniforms, we've got the passport covers, we've got the flags, got the button badges, we've got the following, the support, and some level of financial backing. So it's a work in progress, but I'll be sure to let you know once we get some land, so you can come take some photos of it.
Oh, definitely, of course. I think that's always the thing that I've noticed is the sway which ideas have amongst sort of micronations, especially because obviously is without the land and without the borders as such, everyone focuses a lot more on the ideals of everything, and that's one of the reasons why I was drawn to micronations as an idea. Is just the breadth of thought put into it. Essentially, there's so many different opinions, and there's people from all walks of life who've got into this, and I just want to, and it's a nice compartmentalized version of the entire world, really, isn't it?
Yeah, so yeah, it is. When it comes again, because it's because of the internet, obviously, a lot more people are aware of micronations, and a lot more people set up micronations than would otherwise be, and you do get some very eccentric ideas. You get a lot of edgy 13-year-old communists starting their own socialist states or whatever, and and then you go sort of further onto the spectrum into sort of anarcho-capitalist or something, and then you got sort of the self-declared fascists and whatever else. You get a wide mix of micronations, and the thing that they have in common, most of them, is that they can't stand each other, or they're always creating drama between each other. I don't know if you've ever been on Reddit or Twitter, or even Facebook, less so, I find, but certainly those sort of mediums of social media are just a hotbed of constant bickering.
I've been following the things on Reddit at the moment. There just seems to be so many is it Armenia or something?
Oh yeah, it's the latest one, mate. I generally don't involve myself in anything like it.
I don't blame you.
This is what I sort of rise above it. To be honest, I only ever really post on Reddit for the benefit of people who might come across micronationalism, rather than the benefit of the people who are actually on it. If that makes sense, because the people that are on it are normally sort of already self-declared presidents or dictators or kings or queens or whatever else, and they're interested in promoting their micronation, which for the most part will last 3 weeks until they get bored of it and then dissolve it and then start the process again. There's definitely a variety of ideas, not very well thought out or fleshed out for the most part, but they're there.
Right, one sec. I'll just quickly refer to my. I've got a load of questions, but I have to keep going between the different.
Oh no, it's quite all right.
So I was looking at your page. You got some. How many citizens do you currently have in Stameria then?
Well, it's funny you should say. We actually only opened up citizenship sort of in mid-June. So the way me and my wife wanted to work it is that because we weren't really sure how far we were going to go with this, we wanted to make sure we developed Stameria's sort of values and objectives before we sort of allow people to get more heavily involved.
Yeah.
The idea being it wouldn't really be fair to say come and become a citizen, if you like, a sort of a more and play a more active role in something that they didn't fully understand. So we spent the best part of a year sort of developing objectives. Sort of we gradually posted them. I sort of researched or various things, be it agriculture or renewable energy or monetary systems or economic systems or governmental systems and things like that. And I started to sort of piece it together very gradually, and which is always quite difficult when you're dealing with a micronation, because a micronation, not being a macronation, has to be sort of organized and run differently. So, for example, Stameria being absolute monarchy wouldn't necessarily be applicable on a macronational level, obviously, but on a micronational level, it's the ideal system. So we opened up Citizenship on our 1-year anniversary, again, to give people enough time to sort of fully grasp what we were standing for. And we've only just started accepting the first citizens. We had we were due to have our first video calls, because again, this sort of the Skype account is literally for patrons, sort of citizens in waiting, if you like, to get on board. And we were due to have them a few weeks ago, but some internet problems caused it to be delayed, and obviously with the baby and everything, it was delayed further. So I actually had the first patron become a citizen yesterday afternoon, who's one of our I don't know if you come across our what do you call it, the GoFundMe page, but patrons and supporters can donate there, and he's one of the biggest contributors there, and so he's become our first citizen. So I suppose technically it will be 4 citizens as of this moment, but we're it's not that we don't have the sort of patrons lined up wanting to become citizens. It's just that I haven't had time to actually go through the process of interviewing them. Is the bottom line, I'm afraid. So it would be myself, my wife, little Eleanor, and it would be Ben Harvey.
Okay.
What?
Sorry, you go on. Carry on.
Well, I was just going to say he's also, because of the way our social structure works is people, citizens that contribute financially in a noteworthy way are normally appointed what we define as lords of Stameria, so that's sort of the nobility, and they form part of the imperial court, which is sort of the advisory body. And because Ben was one of those, a significant financial contributor, he's actually not only the first citizen but also the first lord of Stameria, or will be shortly. I think later today he's supposed to be sending me some photos of himself so we can post and announce that. So eye out for that one.
So you mentioned an interview process for it. What sort of things would you be asking people for?
We define the interview process as exceptionally informal but very exclusive. Yeah. So it was more or less like this, and just get to know each other and everything, to just make sure we know, we're on the same page, learn more about each other, what they do for, what their hobbies and their work and all the rest of it, and why they got involved in Stameria and why Stameria over other micronations. Nothing too formal or structured. It's just a general meetup. In normal circumstances, it was intending to go and obviously visit them all personally, but because of obviously the COVID thing, it was better this way. And to be honest, it was actually the right decision to do it this way anyway, because obviously a lot of our patrons are quite far afield, so I'd have to travel to Liverpool or Edinburgh or something to go and have these one-to-one meetings with patrons. So it actually worked out for the better. But again, it was just an informal little chat, just to make sure everyone's on the same page. But again, informal but exclusive, and it's exclusive in the sense that you have to be invited to become a citizen, and you can become a patron. So you subscribe to our email address, and we say why. If you want to become a patron, you just have to tell us why you support Stameria, why, and the reasons for it. How did you come across us and all that jazz. I think we asked 2 or 3 questions. If we're happy with the answers, they become a patron, and then they're just kept updated with sort of like exclusive news updates, if you like, with things moving forward. And if patrons are showing continued interest and support and understanding for the project, then we invite them to become citizens, and again have an informal interview, and then we send, all being well, we send them a passport cover, and there you go.
Okay, yeah. Like, so sort of trying to build the community and sort of getting to know everyone sort of at the...
Yeah, well, again, a lot of the patrons that we have, I've known, not that I met them, but they've sort of interacted with us, myself and my wife, via the Facebook page and the Facebook group that we have, or email, for quite a long time. I mean, Ben Harvey, I forget now, but I'm sure it was sometime last year. So it's 6-8 months, I think, at least, he's been a patron, and then he's obviously become a citizen after that sort of period of time. So we're not in a rush we don't do what most micronations do, which is become a citizen by sending us a message or subscribing to a YouTube channel or whatever else. We try to keep it quite exclusive. So I know the people that I'm supposed to be working with and who are associating with us. Yeah. The idea being
the Monaco model, then.
yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, I mean, it's again, it's exclusive in the sense that Ben Harvey is becoming a Lord of Stameria purely because of his financial contributions, but you don't have to make financial contributions to become a citizen. I've got some interviews I need to be doing next weekend for the citizens that haven't contributed anything financially, but fully supportive and show an interest and continued support for the project. So it's it's not a what do you call it? It's not a straightforward process. It's not like a black and white sort of thing. It's basically who I consider to be worthy of being a citizen, if you like.
Yeah, fair enough. How important is diplomacy and community to micronations as a whole? Then, do you
Between
think?
other micronations, you mean?
Yeah.
Again, I sort of differ from wider micronational community on this particular topic. A lot of micronations, they collect alliances with other micronations like Pokemon cards. You got to get them all. They just sort of send messages, be my ally, be my ally, be my ally. Oh, it's going to be great. We'll have mutual recognition treaties, and we'll, pretend to have this weird trade agreement or friendship, or we'll come to their defense or whatever. I'm not about that. Yeah. We've only formally sort of affiliated. I mean, we're on friendly terms with a lot of micronations, certainly some of the better known ones, for example. But we've only formally associated with two, being Wayward and New Westphalia, and that's purely because I've actually met them, I've interacted with them, we've had actual trade agreements with them, certainly in the case of Wayward, and it was literally, it's after dozens and dozens of meetings with Wayward. I travel there quite frequently, certainly pre-COVID and pre-baby. I was traveling there almost every 2 weeks, up to a point. And the long and the short of it is micronational relationships have their place, absolutely, but they need to mean something. There needs to be a purpose for it. It needs to have value. It needs to be mutually beneficial. And me allying or associating with a micronation in Brazil who's been around for 2 weeks, it doesn't add any value to the project. If anything, it hampers Stameria itself, because we might affiliate with micronations that might not exist in 3 weeks' time. We're after micronations that have longevity and a level of seriousness that again, so the seriousness of micronations is one of those questions, but you can generally tell which are sort of on your level. Yeah. And the ones we affiliate with generally are on our level.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. So what would you say makes a true micronation then? Like, what are the criteria that you would say sort of to your level, essentially?
Oh, well, I mean, my opinion isn't a particularly popular one amongst the sort of pre-teens and adolescents that set up micronations, because if you're setting up a micronation in your parents' back garden, I mean, you might define it as a micronation. I wouldn't have defined it as a micronation back when I was a kid. I think to qualify as a micronation, I mean, there are no qualifications as such, but my personal view is that you need to have land. It doesn't need to be a lot of land. You just need to have land that you have some authority over. You get some claiming, half of Europe, or even their neighborhood, and it's pointless. So I think to be classed as a micronation, you need to have some sort of land of some description that you have genuine ownership and authority over. Claiming territory is a pet hate of mine. So claiming Antarctica, or claiming, I forget the name, there's a plot of land, and I think it's in Egypt or something, that 1,000 micronations have claimed.
Really?
yeah, I can't. I think it's in that neck of the woods. I can't. I'll message you if I think of it. But it's cool. But I think that the bare minimum is that you need to have land. You know, a couple of people to sort of set it up. You know, it could be just you and a friend, or you and your partner, or something. I mean, again, don't need many citizens for a micronation to work. I mean, we're proof of that. We have a lot of, you know, quite a large following, but until recently, it was literally just two of us.
Yeah.
So I suppose when it boils down to it, all you need is a sort of land to do what you want to do with it. I mean, you don't need much more than that to be, from a micronational perspective, it's the bare minimum.
Yeah.
So, if you're not, you're a guy on Reddit who is living in his parents' basement, sort of claiming half of Canada. I mean,
yeah. I suppose there's a difference between the sort of the modelling and going through the motions of government and sort of and trying to sort of not secede, but sort of have that that sort of root of it, isn't it? It's sort of
well, yeah. I mean, there's I forget the name. It's some sort of convention which Micronations always quote with something along the lines that they need a permanent population, a sovereign territory, a government to enter into relations, and something else which I can't remember. But that's, you know, Micronations have never had that capacity. Micronations are, you know, consist of a tiny number of people that do not have genuine sovereignty within their. I mean, can you imagine it if everyone was allowed to be, you know, set up a sovereign nation? I mean, the government, it's not going to happen, is it?
No.
So the best you can do, and this is what we strive. In Stameria, we're realists. We're you know, working within the confines of macronational law to develop, you know, a society and a community within the confines of that law, but as much as to separate ourselves as possible. So in terms of like self-sufficiency, self-sufficiency, self-reliance, so growing your own food, producing your own energy, you know, using I always forget which one it is. It's I think tax avoidance is the legal way to avoid taxes.
Yeah.
But so, you know, for Stameria, for example, we, you know, people who donate financially to us, that's, you know, all tax free because it's considered gifts or donations. We invest in stocks and shares, which are for the project, but that's through a cash ISA, so we don't have to pay taxes on that. You know, just little things that you can do to sort of mitigate your involvement with the outside world, if you like, not in an isolationist way, but in just a, you know, a way to build yourself your own little community.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny. Micronations are sort of a very grey area. It's sort of a combination of LARPing and self-reliance, and you know, it's a or prepping, and it's a hobby that sort of brings a lot of aspects together, and because of that, it gets a bit messy, and you get sort of divisions within the community itself. I mean, this whole thing about, oh, I forget what they're called, simulationists and secessionists or something like that. I mean, that's like a hot topic apparently. I mean, trust me, any micronation you come across that claims to be genuine secessionist is, as a general rule of thumb, the least developed of them.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. I think I've come across one secessionist, and I can't remember his name, but I think he's trying to start something off in Poland somewhere, and I was like, oh, okay. But yeah.
There's only one way that these sorts of movements go, I'm afraid. I mean, when micronations class themselves as secessionists, they try to sort of elevate themselves to genuine nations. So, for example, you know, the Scottish National Party, for example, you would class as a secessionist movement in the sense that they're trying to separate, you know, that's the, you know, Scotland is a genuine nation. A micronation, you know, again, your mates in your parents' back garden claiming the neighborhood, you know, it's not sovereign, it's not going to be independent, you're not a secessionist movement. Just, you know, work towards more realistic goals which actually achieve something.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. How do the values of your nation differ from the values of greater society, and what caused you to want to separate off from all of it?
Well, again, this sort of harks back to it as to whether or not micronations strive for genuine sovereignty and genuine independence.
Yeah.
And I've always argued that the best way to assert yourself is to assert individual sovereignty. And individual sovereignty within a micronation is fairly easy to do through some of the some of the means I've just described. So if you did get your plot of land, you grew your own vegetables, you produced your own energy, and you paid as little tax through legitimate means to the UK government as possible, and then you started to involve other people, and they could legally building dwellings, all above board, all ticking the right boxes and all the rest of it, but just doing it your way. I mean, the best way you could describe it as some sort of commune, if you like, sort of going from there, and then sort of practicing some of the values that you think are important. For example, when it comes to us, we've always strived from the get-go for a monetary system based on precious metals. I mean, I despise micronational currency as a general rule, but certainly fiat currency on a macronational level is something that I've constantly argued about the issues surrounding it. Difference between money and currency and all the rest of it. I don't know if you've read our website, and you might have read something along those lines, but again, I forgot the question.
So how do the values of your nation differ from the values of greater society?
So I mean, in a lot of ways, they're much the same. They're much aligned, if you like. I mean, for us, I suppose the focal points are individual sovereignty, sustainability, and social responsibility. Those are the sort of focal points. There are other issues. I mean, we don't go into like housing policies or anything like that. It sort of goes beyond our remit. But the general values that we stand for would involve sort of a personal responsibility is the best way I could describe it. So you are responsible for your own life, your own well-being, and you should strive to limit the government's involvement in your life. I mean, to be honest, over the time, I've come to sort of appreciate that micronationalism and sort of libertarianism are quite sort of in sync with one another.
Yeah.
I mean, even though my micronation might class themselves as a communist or a socialist or whatever else, there's that sense of self-ownership and that I want to do it this way, so this is the way I'm going to do it. The sense of, in that way, it's a bit of a funny one. It's about taking yourself away from the macronational government and sort of doing your own thing, but then you might implement your own values and you might involve people with those similar values. But again, in terms of the differences between the values of Stameria and the values of the UK government, I mean, what are the values of the UK government? What are the values of the British people? I mean, it depends who you talk to. I mean, it's a whole nother subject, but prior to me being involved in micronationalism, years and years and years ago now, I was actually a politician. So I was a leader of a political party, but when I was about 19, all the way to I was about 26.
Yeah.
So I packed that in so I could spend more time, focusing on me and my life, because I promise you, politics consumes your life.
Yeah.
Even on a very, very minute level, it consumes your life.
Yeah, I studied politics at university. I know exactly what you mean.
So it's again, I've lost my train of thought, and I do apologise. But because when I was involved in politics, I was always interested in discussing ideas with people. And again, going on a tangent, once you remove yourself from politics and you sort of look at things with a clean slate without having to worry about sort of votes and elections and what people might think of you, that's why micronationalism is better, because it's just your land, you say and do and act the way you want or what you think is going to be right. And if people agree with the values that you have, then they can involve themselves in it. I'm not going to, I don't consider Britain to have values in the sense that they're all very, ecological, they're all very environmental, or they're all very, keen on, or, not everyone in Britain will agree with my take on, reforming the monetary or governmental systems of the United Kingdom. I mean, you'll never find that sort of consensus. But where micronations sort of have the advantage in that sense is that, like a political party, you attract like-minded people, and then you can build from there. You don't have to have a set of values that you have to force everyone to accept. It's a sort of a voluntarism to it, which sort of ties into the sort of the social responsibility and the individual sovereignty aspect of what we're striving to do.
Platform, isn't it? It's it's the way of you being able to talk about your ideas for things.
Yeah, I mean, micronations for the most part are set up for, different reasons. I mean, a lot of times it's just a bit of fun, and it is fun. But it, you know, a lot of them do try to make a serious political points. You know, it might be about human rights or gay rights. I know there was a micronation, I think it was in Australia, where they claimed a coral reef or something, declared it as a micronation, as a way of advocating for gay rights in that region. But Stameria doesn't have like a singular political point to make. It's just about trying to develop a society which we can sort of mold from the start. I mean, I was always very interested in history, especially ancient history, sort of Mesopotamia, sort of, earliest human civilizations and all the rest of it. And again, it sort of ties into it all. Is that, I would say, if I had to start a nation from scratch, what would it look like? And that's sort of what we're trying to build here. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure that doesn't answer you. I'm afraid I'm giving you horrendously politicized answers, or a politician's answer to everything.
Again, like the purpose of these calls is to effectively supplement the projects as a whole. And so what do you feel that macronations can learn from micronations and micronationalists in general? Like, are there any things which sort of macronational leaders can learn from people in the community?
I mean, being honest, I highly doubt it. I mean, we all have we have different opinions about how a society or a nation or a community should be run. Yeah. But do I think, Boris Johnson or Angela Merkel are going to learn something from, Kevin Barr from Molossia? Do I think they're going to sort of listen to his advice on certain issues? I very much doubt it. I mean, they're in the positions they're in because, despite what a lot of people might think, they probably know a few things about the world and how the world works. I might not always agree with what they stand for myself, and again, that's part of the reason that I sort of establish a micronations, to sort of attract like-minded people and do our own sort of thing, again within the confines of the law. But do I think that if I had to sit down with Boris Johnson, then I would sort of convince him to introduce a monetary system using gold and stuff? I very much doubt it. I mean, I'm sure if it was an idea that had crossed his mind before, he would sort of run with it if he actually supported it. Yeah. So I'm afraid the honest answer is probably not, no.
That's it. The only reason I ask that is I'm starting to, the more people that I talk to, the more I'm sort of trying to tailor the questions to the project itself, because originally it's sort of about micronations and the people behind them, essentially. Now it's sort of it's almost coming to becoming a sort of using micronations to sort of make comment on the greater world, sort of, and sort of where the parallels between sort of people within micronations can be seen within within the rest of society as well. So I'm trying to sort of testing the waters with a couple of questions. So some of them might not land, some of them might, but. So what does it take to be a ruler of a micronation?
The desire to rule a micronation. There's not much more to it than that, really. I mean, it's I think for a micronation to have longevity, you need strong centralized leadership, and you need that strong centralized leadership to be committed to the project. You'll find typically if you have a micronation that's governed as a republic with a weak executive, if you like, put bluntly, if you've got a bunch of mates and you're all making a decision together, it falls apart pretty quickly because there's no top-down leadership. And if there's not a top-down leadership, you get factionalism and chaos and sort of disagreements, and it all just sort of falls apart. So the best thing you can do is accept that the micronation itself will consist of yourself and perhaps your partner, or maybe one of your closest friends or something to that effect. And if more people want to get involved, they get involved with the understanding of how the structure works, which is top down. Because at the end of the day, this is the thing with micronations, is that leading on to your earlier question, what I consider to be a genuine micronation, someone that has land and can do something with that land to promote, to actually sort of carry out the values and objectives they're seeking to do. If you have other people involved, they are going to make decisions about what you can do with your own land, which entirely defeats the purpose of a micronation. I mean, if you're going to let random strangers on the internet that signed up as citizens tell you what you can do with your land, you may as well just not set up a micronation. It could well end up being that. This is my distaste, coming from a former politician. This is where my distaste for democracy on a micronational level really irritates me. Because people set up micronations thinking, I know, it'll be a democracy or a republic or something to that effect, and I'm just going to be like a figurehead or something like that. And if people, decide to take it a certain route that you disagree with, you're stuck as the head of a micronation that with your land that's being used in a way that you don't approve of. Yeah. I mean, what's the point?
Yeah.
Again, it comes down to that sort of individual sovereignty thing about the right of you to use your land the way you see fit, again, within the confines of macronational law and all the rest of it. But, that's what a micronation doesn't have to extend much beyond yourself and the close few associates.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the most successful ones in the world, or certainly some of the better known ones in the world, are literally a handful of people. You might have like tens of thousands of citizens by virtue of they've subscribed to an email list or a YouTube channel or whatever else they define as a citizen, but the power still remains with a very select few of people, regardless of what title they might have, be it a president or a king or whatever else. So to be a micronational ruler, you just need to have the drive to be a micronational ruler.
Were you aware of micronations before you set up Stameria, or was that something you sort of discovered along the way?
No, to be honest, it was I was aware of micronations. I mean, like most people, I'd sort of come across the term before, never really paid it much heed. Most people, myself included at the time, had other things going on in their lives. They didn't need to delve into what some random guy on the internet was doing in his back garden. Yeah. I also did a lot of research leading up to the actual declaration of Stameria, if you like. I mean, even on my sort of 3 months into it, me and my wife were on a honeymoon, and whenever she went to sort of take a nap or something in the bedroom, then I would sort of go out into the sort of lounge area with my laptop, and I'd start writing about the monetary and governmental policies that I would like to see implemented for Stameria. I mean, that was an experience. That's my honeymoon. No, I mean, it's again, just to get back to your question, it's just about drive. It's about getting involved, having an idea, and sort of just running with it and seeing where it takes you. You stop worrying about alliances with other micronations. Stop worrying about having the most citizens of everyone else. I mean, just you do you.
Yeah, definitely. So, do you and your wife sort of run it together, don't you? The sort of your like a project.
Samantha plays. I mean, I wouldn't say tolerates it, but she plays a less active role than I do. I mean, she loves to dress up, and she loves the sort of a lot of aspects of it. She hasn't played much in the way of in terms of developing the values and the objectives. I sort of write them out and sort of discuss them with her. Yeah. And I sort of show the website. Does this make sense? Do you understand it? Do you what are your thoughts on it? And we sort of bounce ideas at each other. But she's not like what's the word I'm looking for? She's not like an intellectual in the sense that differing governmental and monetary systems or economic systems are a particular interest to her. Yeah. She just likes wearing shiny things, dressing up, and and sort of
pageantry of it all. But
sorry,
interested in the pageantry.
Yes, exactly. I mean, she but even before I met her, she loved sort of reenactment stuff. So she would dress in Regency or Tudor stuff, and that's until recently. Obviously, she's looking after the baby. Until recently, she was doing workshops with dressing up as Tudor, queens and all the rest of it, and sort of giving talks and stuff. So it's sort of right up her alley in that way. And she does love the idea of sort of buying a plot of land and just doing what we want with it. Yeah. But in terms of the nitty gritty detail, it's largely down to me to sort of come up with that stuff. But that's where my interests lie. I mean, like I said, when I was involved in politics, when I got involved in politics since I was 16, but I love discussing ideas. I love understanding how the world works and sort of finding ways in which they can be tweaked or changed in order to sort of improve or change the outcome of it. It's always been an interest to me, but doing it through a micronationalism is a lot easier for me than doing it through sort of politics, because with politics you have to worry about what other people think of you, whereas with a micronation you just do what you want to do, and sort of people don't agree with it, it doesn't have any impact on me.
Having said that, I'm reading the Shock Doctrine at the moment by Naomi Klein. Have you ever read it?
Oh, I'm afraid I haven't. No.
It's essentially it's about disaster capitalism and sort of and the role that the US plays in South America, sort of in the 70s and everything. And and they definitely did not care about what happened, if people like them or not during that time, I think.
No, exactly.
But right, on to the next one. What would you consider the high points and low points of being an emperor at the moment?
I mean, to be honest, again, when it comes to micronations and micronational leadership, there's it's an emperor. I never insist people call me an emperor or anything like that. It's because it's the Empire of Stomaria that I'm an emperor. But I didn't insist on you calling your Imperial Majesty or whatever else. So it's I suppose a high point of. I mean, I like meeting other micronational leaders, a certain level of understanding and mutual respect as to where we are, sort of in terms of how we sort of like when I met Dan, for example. I mean, we had that sort of formal photos and all the rest of it. And when I go to Wayward, they have I don't know if you've seen it, but in Wayward they have like a throne, and they have two small thrones, and I always get invited to sit on the other one with their sort of community around, and I love the sort of I can't think of the word, but it's the pomp, if you like, the sort of the pomp and ceremony of it. I mean, something I very much enjoy. But in terms of as an absolute monarchy, it's just like I said, it's just me and my family, and now there's one other guy, officially, and as a citizen. I mean, there's only so much sort of there's not been any great disappointments, I have to say. I mean, it's just the way you run an empire, a micronation, is the way you would run a business. I mean, you might have hiccups along the way in the sense of maybe, I suppose one of the biggest disappointments I had was when a dozen flags came and they were the wrong shade of blue. So so I had to go through a process of 2 weeks of reordering them. I mean really is probably the low point. I mean, the high point, just on a very cheesy level, I suppose, was the birth of little Princess Eleanor, little Eleanor of Stameria. I mean, that was obviously a high point in my book. So
imagine it'd be a high point in anyone's book.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I'm afraid I don't know if that's sort of the answer you're looking for, but I really can't. I mean, there's not been a coup or anything, so, I've not had to expel anyone or sort of kick anyone out or anything like that. There's not been any sort of upstarts or anything like that. So no, it's
yeah. Again, it's because each person that I'm speaking to is such a different experience of it. It's always interesting to sort of, the sum of all the parts of it, you kind of sort of form.
I mean, you'll get some micronations, I'm sure, that will list off, we had this micronational war with X, Y, and Z, and it was a Discord war, or you said something mean to me on Reddit, so we declared war. No, that's sort of it. If that's the sort of answer you're looking for, you're not going to get it from me.
Yeah, I'm less interested in that sort of thing. It's the people that are taking it seriously and taking it to another level who are the ones I'm trying to talk to you more.
Okay.
Yeah. So also having a look at your website, and seeing that you are the vacancy for ministers, essentially, looking forward. So your focuses are on sort of agriculture, energy, environment, and finance at the moment. What sort of plans do you have for culture or anything like that? Do you find that culture is an important part?
Culture or agriculture?
Culture.
Well, I think when it comes to culture, I think those sorts of things develop naturally. Yeah. I think it's not something you can sort of force on people. I mean, we have a certain level of certain values and certain objectives that we want to accomplish. But I think in terms of culture, in terms of an actual identity, it's not something that I felt was necessary to sort of artificially create.
Yeah.
I think it's just going to be something that's going to have to occur naturally. I mean, because of my interests and because of where we come from and what we stand for, I would say, I think it's reasonable to say that we're sort of going to blend various aspects of different cultures together as time goes on. Even in the most minute ways. I mean, the most obvious example that comes to mind was the sabers that we got, which are intended to be carried by what will eventually be the Imperial Guard, and they're sort of a Hungarian origin, sort of curved blade, and the blades themselves are sort of a mixture of Western and Eastern design. Sort of they've got the handle of a sort of traditional sort of medieval sword, and then they've got the curvature that you would expect, further east. And I chose that particular sword for that exact reason, because I wanted to sort of highlight the point that Stameria is also going to be sort of this blend of different cultures and ideas and attitudes, and I think the culture will just sort of develop naturally from there. But for a culture to properly develop, you really need to have an actual community. There's only so much culture you can have when it comes to people interacting online. I mean, you need people sort of together really to make that sort of thing happen. And that doesn't even necessarily mean sort of everyone living in the same plot of land, but certainly people interacting with each other in some capacity on a regular basis. I mean, that's how culture is formed, as far as I'm concerned. It's not something that you just type out on a website and just expect to happen.
Yeah, fair enough. I think it's one of those interesting things I find, because generally how I feel about culture, and sort of like, culture is a thing which sets aside different people, like sets aside nations, isn't it? Sort of their outlook on things. But so I mean,
the issue you have there is that a nation, the culture of nations today, hundreds and thousands of years in the making, based on defining characteristics. It might be predominantly a religious thing or an ideological thing. I mean, what was culturally the norm in China 200 years ago is obviously very different from what it is now, and the same with you could go back to virtually any country in the world and have that sort of that cultures develop and evolve over time. I mean, what was acceptable in America 200 years ago was certainly not considered to be socially acceptable, culturally acceptable today. I mean, it's so this is what I mean. I mean, as far as culture is a fluid sort of thing that you can't really control or define to the point where this is my culture and this is how it's going to stay forever, because that's not how it works. Much like nations, they change.
Where do you see Stameria going in the next 5 years or 5-10 years or so?
Gosh, I mean, ideally, the long-term plan, without much detail, is the gradual accumulation of plots of land, be it forest land, woodland, or actual dwellings across British Isles, and that's where the sort of empire side of it comes from. Sort of different different areas around the country, with the idea being that these plots of land can be lived on, managed, depending on what the purpose of the land is, by citizens of Stameria or governors, or whoever's going to be sort of appointed to look after them. So I think that is probably the long-term objective. I think we have much else is sort of in place. I mean, we have our I think quite a broad sort of list of objectives of what we stand for. We've got our values. We have the enough suitable merchandise. I think. I mean, we might get a few more flags or something of varying degrees. But until we actually get the land, again, I come back to the land issue that I've come back to, that I've mentioned before, is that without the land, you can't really be a micronation. You can't really assert yourself the way you want to assert yourself. So gradually accumulating as much land as possible is the name of the game.
Okay.
So I don't know, half of Britain, or I'd say half of Yorkshire. There you go. There's an objective for you. 5-10 years, half of it.
Sounds good. What would you want if you wanted people outside of the micronation community to know one thing about micronations? What would it be?
I would say that if I had to, I'm trying to think of a way to phrase this. Micronations are not all the same. Don't be put off by the first micronation you bump into, because the chances are, I mean, you could literally list tens of thousands of micronations. Most of them dissolve quite quickly, but by and large, they're run by, teenagers or adolescents or preteens and all the rest of it, and they give off a very poor impression of what a micronation could be, or what they could, what their full potential could be. And so when you come across sort of Stameria or Wayward or the Republic of New Westphalia, for example, even us three, we're not the same. We're not at the same sort of stages of our development. Some are more advanced than others. I mean, Wayward obviously has their own land and all the rest of it, but have their eccentric quirks, but they're quite advanced. Yeah. We have we focused over the last sort of 3-6 months on building up a sizable financial reserve in the form of the Imperial Treasury, which eventually we'll use to acquire land. So we're quite well funded. The Republic of New Westphalia, it's got a bit of longevity to it, but again, it's not as developed as it could be. I mean, it's sort of stalled a little bit. I'm sure Dan would have said much the same thing. But for the most part, if you Google micronations online, you'll either come across the usual Molossia, Hut River, Empire of Atlantium micronations. But if you go on sort of Reddit on Twitter, you'll find boys in their parents' back garden raising a flag and declaring war on each other. So I would say don't be put off by the first micronation you come across, because the odds are they're not representative of the community, as a whole.
Okay. Which other micronations do you recommend that I talk to, sort of, or try to get in contact? Really, is there anyone?
I mean, it's well, aside, you've obviously spoken to the Republic of New Westphalia. The Wayward Territory I would definitely recommend doing, because they would be happy to have you there to take photos, to do interviews, and whatever else you want to do. Perfect. Danny, or Raoul, as you'll probably come to know him. Yeah. He can talk for England. He really can. I mean, he loves to chat. He has a lot of sort of theories and ideas. Yeah. About what a micronation is, and how he wants to sort of move forward with it. Not always aspect. He has ideas that I do not always necessarily agree with in terms of what he considers to be a micronation and where he wants to go with it. Yeah. But he's a terrific chap. He's easier to talk to. Yeah. And he's probably what I would consider one of the more advanced sort of micronations out there. So I mean, he's Devon way, Brandscore, okay. Sort of quite close to the coast. So he would be definitely one. Another one I would recommend, but I can't for the life of me remember what it's called. So that's not a good start. Let me tell you what. Let me just give me 2 seconds, and I'll try to find it without trying to butcher the name. Are you talking about meeting as in micronations in the UK, or like videos?
I'm slowly reaching out potentially into Europe, but predominantly in the UK at the moment, just to keep the budget for this project down as low as possible.
All right, okay, yeah, and I would recommend those two. I mean, in terms of micronations that I've interacted with in the UK, those are the only two. Again, it's no coincidence that those are the two micronations that we formally affiliate with, because of the two micronations we met, and proper relations with.
Yeah. How do you end up meeting Wayward, and sort of, is it mostly just sort of through the Facebook groups and things?
When I was setting up Stameria, we actually were Wayward and Stameria were sort of set up at around about the same time. I think there was less than a month in between us. And on Facebook, I'm sure you've come across them before, but there's various Facebook groups for Micronation. I joined a few. I sort of posted about Stameria. I noticed Waywards. I sort of clicked on them, watched some of his videos, thought they were entertaining. Didn't immediately jump on it, but after a couple of months of developing Stameria, I sort of reached out to him and said, I noticed you got these chickens that lay blue eggs. I thought it was a bit of a novelty, and Stameria's obviously got blue is quite a heavy color in Stameria, so I thought, well, that would be quite a sort of little quirky thing to have.
Yeah.
At the time, I was sort of tinkering with the idea of sort of silver and gold as a monetary system, so I thought I contacted him, and the first thing I said is, would you be interested in taking some silver in exchange for some of your eggs?
Yeah.
And so I went over there and made the exchange. I hung around for most of the day. So I got talking about, where we come from and all the rest of it, and where we thought we were going to go with it. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I would consider him a good friend. I must have met him now, best part of 3 dozen times by this point in the space of a year. So yeah, I mean, like I said, he's definitely one I would recommend getting in touch with.
Yeah, definitely. Perfect. Brilliant. That'll yeah, that's essentially all my questions. I managed to get through everything. Thank you so much for taking the time.
No, it's quite all right. I'm sorry. I'm just I ramble a lot about nothing. I mean, I feel sorry for you. You have to. See, we're about an hour in already. I mean, you'll never get through all of this. Yeah, feel free to delete. I mean,
it's all fine. I've got about 5 hours of interviews now that I'm sort of like building up a bank of. It's quite fun. Like I'm just enjoying sort of the opportunity to talk to so many people that have such strong convictions on sort of all these sort of what it takes to run a country essentially, and it's just all interesting stuff. I love it. But yeah, part of this project is sort of me taking photos at some point. Would you be up for that if if I could get?
I absolutely would. I mean, like I said, because we don't have the land, I'm not sure where you'd want to take photos of myself personally, but something I potentially recommend. If you do want to organize, if you want to get in contact and organize, a video call with Raoul or Danny at Wayward, I'm actually going to go down there this coming Saturday, next Saturday. But on a later date, I'll be going down again at some point. I mean, if you want to sort of organize it, between the three of us, if you want me to go to Wayward, for example, and then you can take photos of me there at Wayward, would probably be the best suggestion I could come up with.
Yeah.
It might be a bit of a trek for you though, to the Christchurch area, the sort of Branscore area.
Yeah.
So it really depends how far afield you want to go. If it's just me you want to take a photo with, I'm perfectly happy to do so. But it'd be in a park somewhere. It wouldn't have anything to do with the sort of Stameria itself.
Yeah. Definitely. I think I'll talk to Raoul, see if we can get in contact with him and sort of outline the project and what I want to do as well. I think it'd be quite nice to sort of be able to take photos of you and your wife together, because I saw that photo of the two of you sort of in the with the diamonds and everything, and sort of the pageantry aspect.
I have no idea how long we spent trying to take that photo, just trying to get the little one to look in the right direction.
Yeah. I've done some photography of jewelry before, and it's absolutely pain. But yeah, so it'd be really good to sort of be able to take just a couple of snaps of sort of you and your family sort of as the core group of Stameria. And then obviously when you have land in the future, I can come back and we can sort of add to the pile of photos we have. And then it's essentially just sort of it's the story of the people more so than the story of the countries themselves.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, if that works for you, that'd be great.
What sort of time frame are you sort of looking to do all this within?
I've given myself a year for the project essentially. So
okay. Well, I might even have appropriate land at that point anyway. But I mean, I was going to say, if it's in the next few weeks, I mean, that's going to be a bit of a problem for me, because again, sort of, I'm now working sort of 50, 60 hours a week, and then I've got the baby when I get home. So it's
fair enough, yeah.
Juggling all of this. I mean, the only reason I was able to do it tonight is because I drove my wife to my to her parents for a couple of days. So because I was working all weekend. I literally only got home 2 hours ago.
Yeah.
And so, just so she had some help and company. So we had I have a quiet evening the first time in a long time.
Taking the time then, like, I didn't want to take.
No, it's fine. You send such a, when you messaged me, I felt bad. I didn't want to sort of mess you around. Saying, I can do X, Y, and Z, but I got an opportunity. This is one of the few opportunities I've had to sort of, have a proper little sit down. So I just wanted to make sure we got you off the way, get you out of the way in the nicest possible way, and sort of tick you off my list.
Yeah. Fair enough. Well, I don't want to take up any more of your one evening off then. So I know the struggles when you work so hard as well. 'Cause, long hours are the worst. But I mean, we'll definitely happy to keep in touch. And I'll keep you updated on the project. For everything, and we'll be able to find a time when we can take some photos later on when you have a bit of time.
Get in touch with Raoul, and then again, I'm sure he'll be quite happy to have you there. You'll probably have to agree to some terms and conditions that he'll insist you sort of read through and sign. Though even I have to sign them. I mean, I think it'll be a good start for you. I mean, if you're looking for a genuine sort of active micronation, then I mean, Dan from different Dan, the Republic of New Westphalia Dan. He's great, and he's been doing it a long time and everything. But again, it's I presume he went to his home. So there's a stark difference between where he is and where Raoul is at the moment.
Yeah. Definitely.
So I would definitely go and have a contact with Raoul.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Andrew. It's lovely speaking to you as well. Okay.
Yes, do keep in touch.
Well, if you enjoyed that interview and you've made it this far, please feel free to like the video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll catch you next time.